questions asked to Maruti, to us, to me directly, that are you downsizing? Because at that point of time, downsizing was quite sensational news. So they wanted to say every company is downsizing. When they asked me, I said no. They were quite surprised when they asked why. I said I don't report to you for my HR strategic decisions really. That's why we are not downsizing. But my simple learning at that point of time was what is coming out in the external environment, just taking it at face value and driving your business strategies or people strategies based on that, I think will be the biggest mistake which one can commit. It's always better, take a little time, have a little detached mindset at the top, which we did exactly in Maruti, top 10 of us. We spent a couple of days discussing what exactly is this problem at this point of time and how Maruti is getting impacted. So what we identified is that for us the basic problem was finance companies, especially private players, after the global meltdown in US, suddenly got so badly hurt because of those bad debts that they suddenly stopped financing process itself. So at that point of time, some of these private financial players were doing roughly 15,000 cars per month for Maruti. They came down to 400 cars financing from 15,000. So what they were doing, actually, they were rejecting applicants by finding some fault or the other. So in our case, the issue was financing. There was no other issue. Second issue, what we also experienced a little later, that there's a guy, maybe a general manager level guy from an insurance company, he wants to buy a car. He has made this decision in his family. He's wanting to go for a specific car like Swift, he told me. He has no problem of financing, but he was having this fear that maybe I can lose my job over the next 5-6 months. It's so uncertain, so let me just postpone. So there was this low sentiment, this threatening environment, which was the second problem we identified. Now we also looked at that the impact of economic slowdown was variable in India. Certain corporate sectors like realty sector, export-oriented, ITs directly orienting from US were very badly impacted. There were certain sectors like automobiles, they were impacted because of this environment, those sentiments and financing. There were FMCG companies who were impacted partially. And there was this telecom sector which was just not impacted. Why? Because the bigger the crisis, more you talk on the phone, so more Bharti Airtel and Vodafone they will do it, right? So there was no crisis there. They will continue to, do the normal HR policies and systems and processes. But when we look at perhaps some of these actual learnings, then we also come to a very specific fact. Sometimes, instead of looking to the government, instead of expecting the external environment to become very supportive, ideal, perfect, I think we'll have to find solutions within our own company, within our own businesses. What we did in Maruti, and perhaps the saying goes that the companies which prepare for the rainy day when the going is good, when it is booming, when everything is fine, I think they are the companies who stay reasonably stronger to be able to, capable enough to be able to handle any storm. 2-3 years back, we started our relationships with nationalized banks, starting with SBI. So huge bank, tremendous potential and tremendous reach. But it is not that fashionable like ICICI or HDFC. But we had a very strong relationship going with SBI, with Punjab National Bank, Bank of Baroda. Believe me, during that crisis, July 2008 onwards, they came in very handy for supporting sale of Maruti cars. We also looked at the rural segment 2 years back, and we created a big infrastructure within our organizational setup in Maruti and brought in almost about 200 people, partially directly on Maruti and partially through our dealers, who started looking at this rural sector sales. And during this economic downtrend, rural sector contributed roughly 9% total sales of Maruti compared to 2% it used to be earlier. And they are all cash sales. They don't depend on financing and all that. Another thing which came in very handy. Similarly, 3 years back, we have created a big institutional area within our sales and marketing organization for corporate sales. Sales to big companies, big corporates, public sector companies, railways, government. We called it the institutional sales group. There were 3 people working 3 years back. Now there are roughly about 60 people working in that. November, December onwards, 2008, we turned back from that little turbulent weather, and we started doing normal volumes, and we have been growing 14, 15%, 20%. August was 29%. So in spite of the downtrend, the first quarter results of Maruti, we expected the market that perhaps they will feel that Maruti will do well in spite of the economic slowdown. So we asked both analysts and investors before the board meeting 24th July, what is your expectation for financial performance of Maruti? And they said that perhaps we are expecting 400 crores plus kind of net profit. 24th July, when we announced the board results, the net profit was 583 crores for that first quarter. That is where the real content of a company comes into play. Rather than looking at comfort coming from government policies, comfort coming from the external environment, everything should be nice, very, very cozy, very, very supportive, ideal, perfect. Same perspective, my request to all of you is, you will have to bring in, when you are looking at these challenges related to the people strategy. Now let us just quickly take one or two examples. Those companies which went for knee-jerk reactions will have the first challenge or the task, very tough task, of reversing their people strategy. So versus downsizing and those bitter, quick, immediate reactions on people, they'll have to have talent acquisition, but before that, they'll have to build up their image as a positive employer. Isn't it? It will be tough. The same company which asks people to go right and left, 200, 300, 400, 700, 1,000, 6 months back, comes back to the market and says we want to hire. I think there will be a bit of a gap, a bit of a problem there. Similarly, perhaps when we look at this upcoming kind of economic trends, signals, hirings have started. That means perhaps there will be a high demand in the environment. But high demand will be for right talent, not the surplus manpower, the surplus labor which India boasts of. When we look at the demand for the right talent, there is a problem of supply. But last 5, 7, 10 years, honestly, we haven't seen much of work being done in the Indian context of ensuring this consistent supply, we should be able to meet the projected demand. When we look at the white paper on 2016, I think the gap is huge. So I think those companies who have lost credibility, lost corporate image, lost the employer's perspective as a good, positive corporate, perhaps will find it more difficult to get the right talent in place. Then comes the question of really building this people credibility, bringing in a lot of training and development perspective, and then revisiting or re-incurring those costs which they could have easily saved at that point in time. So some of these challenges for those companies which went for knee-jerk reactions. For the companies, few of them which were cool, mature, considered, took people strategic decisions based on medium to long-term plans. I think nothing hugely is going to change. Perhaps focus, attrition will start. Perhaps those indications are already there in September. As we go along, maybe the last quarter starting January, February, March 2010, perhaps we'll be back to a high attrition trend. Therefore, focus will come on engagement, focus will come on retention of people. Also, perhaps these good companies are investing a lot rather than trying to get ready-made talent from outside. They are trying to develop their own talent. So there will be very high focus on developing people, nurturing people. And perhaps when we look at this kind of investment, it also adds to the employer of choice perspective of the corporate. And Maruti perhaps is a good example in that context. There's also a view which most companies will have to look at in terms of revisiting their cost structures. Getting absolutely uncompetitive on manpower costs will have to be revisited. And in that context, when we look at the automotive industry, which I can talk more authentically, perhaps the normal trend is to have 5%, 6% labor cost as a ratio to the sales turnover of the company. When we look at Maruti, ours is 2% of the sales turnover of Maruti, roughly about 24,000 crores. 2% is quite competitive and a very big advantage. And in that sense, perhaps when we also look at manpower cost, you will have to look at, do we hire all experienced people with high cost, or do we bring in a ratio, some 60-40, 70-30 of fresh versus lateral hires? If you bring in this kind of a balance, your labor cost comes down, your average wage comes down. Some of these perspectives also will come into play. End of the day, perhaps as Hari said, one reality on HR challenges will continue to be managing the workforce, the large unionized category of people, managing industrial relations as a bread and butter subject. There perhaps three things come to my mind, what we have done in Maruti. There's a big role in terms of managing this large workforce of how the top leadership role is defined in the company. Is it based on certain core values? Is it based on certain morals? Is it based on the example that you walk the talk and you create an example when you lead? Or it is based on deceptive gaps, that I say something and I do something else. So in Maruti, when we say 8:45 is the arrival time for everybody to be punching in their cards, that is implemented across from a technician at the shop floor to the managing director, Mr. Shindhu Naganishi, same perspective. Second idea which comes to my mind out of our experiences, what work environment do we provide to our people? Deceptive or genuine? Where perhaps we bring in this perspective of team and equality, camaraderie, or we bring in levels, hierarchy, and protocols of yes sir, no sir, yes sir, is another thing which we have to look at. Perhaps our experience in terms of common uniforms, open offices, common food canteen, living together, rewards and recognition perspectives, quality circles, participation in terms of session schemes, guidance, has created a work environment where each person feels that this is my own company. I think we'll have to look at that perspective rather than saying management murdawad and falana damkana and all that perspective. But third part that more bread and butter for us is what kind of HR strategy we are looking at, including the strategy on industrial relations, how exactly are the policies, systems, processes being cascaded down the line in the real sense. These three perhaps will give us a firm indication of either a company having a lot of gaps or a company reasonably mature. The nascent companies first category will have only gaps. The baseline companies perhaps will be moving towards some understanding on these three perspectives. Top leadership, convenient kind of positive work culture, and mature people strategy, policies, systems, and processes. First category, absolutely lower end nascent companies. Second category, baseline. Third category is, I think, evolving. Those who are reasonably fine but need to enter into the maturism. And fourth is the mature company. There are models which you can see. I'm talking about Maruti with tremendous pride. During this entire episode, including our contract workers and all of us put together, we are about 16,000, 17,000 people. We did not downsize even a single contract worker in Maruti, and I'm very proud to say that in front of all of you. Perhaps with this, I think I would like to end my kind of thought sharing, whatever I thought in this short time I can share with you. Last thing, only thing I can suggest is all these examples do give you a little perspective on my company, Maruti. So whenever you are thinking of buying a car, please only consider buying Maruti cars. Thank you.
Keynote address. Mr. Siddiqui is the Managing Executive Officer, Administration, HR, IT and Finance in Maruti Suzuki India Limited. Now I would like to call Dr. A.K. Rath, President DMA, to please come up on the dais and say a few words.
Mr. Siddiqui, Mr. Ritesh Jain, Sri Hari Nayak, Sri Anurag Goel, distinguished resource persons and participants. It's my proud privilege to welcome you as President of Delhi Management Association to this DNA IBA interaction on a very topical understand all of you are being drafted as members of DMF. Am I right? All of you are being drafted today as members of DMF. I welcome you to the proud organization of DMF also. The topic for today is most appropriate: HR interventions as a catalyst to face post-recessionary challenges. We heard a very learned presentation by Mr. Siddiqui and Maruti point of view, the proud company that Maruti is. Well, downturn, recession, financial crisis do come and will come. How we face and how we prepare ourselves to face these situations are important. In fact, if